You're listening to Footy Prime, the podcast, with Danny Dichio, Craig Forrest, and James Sharman. Today, we welcome Dan Wong and the Big Blue Dildo. I'm Jeff Cole. Let's get this party started.
It is going to be some party with the Big Blue Dildo, that is for sure. Thank you, Jeff Cole. Welcome to Footy Prime, everyone. It's been another week behind us, another week of many talking points. No guest this week. We've gone old school this week. Just the original members. We figured that how could anyone really follow in the footsteps of Thomas Rongen from last week? TR put in a world-class performance last week, so we thought we'd let it breathe for a week before bringing on someone else. So thank you once again, TR. If you didn't get last week's edition, check it out. It is quite amusing. It got me thinking, though, certain people in football are very hard to follow, as is TR in the podcast world. So, is there one person, one player, one manager who stands out to you boys as impossible to follow? Fergie, of course, jumps out to me, and we've seen the issues at United ever since. But is there someone that, even in your careers, have been impossible to follow?
For me, yeah. When I was younger, I had an interesting situation growing up in the QPR Academy, and I was there since I was 9 years old, leading into the first team. But in the first team at that time was a stellar striker who was a local fella as well, who broke into the league at a later age in his career, Mr. Sir Les Ferdinand, and he was QPR's big number 9. So there was many rumours because he had a couple of years in the Premier League where he was banging goals aplenty against the Liverpools, the Manchester Uniteds, against big teams. You can score goals in the Premier League, but when you're scoring pairs or hat-tricks against the big teams, that's when the big teams come calling. And it was at that present time when Newcastle were going through a little bit of a transition and they were spending money. And it eventually happened where Sir Les got into the England team, and there was a lot more rumours coming around the club, and he eventually went for big money. And that next year, myself and Kevin Gallen, who was another academy product from QPR, where we grew up through the system together, was suddenly thrown into the Lions Den in the Premier League to say, all right, fellas, we got sink or swim time. It's up to you young boys to provide the goals and try and replicate what Sir Les had been doing for the last 3 or 4 years for the first team. And it was a difficult moment for me. Not that I felt immediate pressure, but he was such a incredible talisman for QPR and our focal point. Craig probably played against him many times, but he was a big, strong number 9 and a lot different than a skinny, tall boy from West London who could hold the ball up at nifty feet. But I was nowhere near the physical prowess of Sir Les at that present time. So a very difficult act to follow.
Yeah, he was amazing. I remember playing at Loftus Road, and I don't know if it was a keeper punted it and it bounced, and I'm going up to catch it. I've leapt pretty high, I thought, and he's out-jumped me. He's actually flicked the ball. His leap was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And he was mobile, so he was big, strong, mobile guy, a great finisher. Good guy, too.
Yeah.
So Tish, when he left, obviously it was mainly a financial choice for QPR, but did they have great faith in you and say, okay, listen, to the fans, we've got to sell this guy, but we've got some good kids coming through here who may not replace him straight away, but potentially could lead this club moving forward?
I think so. The club were going through a little mini transition as well, because we just lost our head coach, our manager at the time, Jerry Francis, who used to be the ex-captain of England, but a fantastic player for QPR as well. And he was a head coach that had done very well at QPR, and he moved on to Tottenham Hotspurs. So Ray Wilkins came in after him, and we were going for a little bit of transition where I think the club was struggling to hold on to their better players, but also to keep up with the big spenders in the Premier League at that time. So we started bringing in younger players, and it wasn't just myself and Kev that were developing from the youth team. They were buying younger players as well to try and implement them into a new way of playing, but also hoping for them to progress and develop in the Premier League. And sometimes, as Craig will know, knows as well. You can't have a bunch of young players playing in the Premier League week in, week out. You need that vet experience with you as well.
Class of 92, Ditch.
Yes, but they still had their vets in there like Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Peter Schmeichel, guys like that were keeping them in intact, you know.
Is there a club like QPR that's gone through a few transitions in their time, haven't they? Gone from having money, no money, being in the top flight, being relegated. Just quite the spiral of excitement with that club.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a little bit like West Ham as well, Craig, where they went through a couple of different owners that promised so much money and they wanted to take the club into the promised land, and they were building a new stadium for years and years at QPR. They're still in their old stadium, Loftus Road, which was, as I said, where I grew up as a fan, and then was very lucky and fortunate to play there as a player. But there was numerous owners that came in, whether they had the backing of the F1 team once in a while. Then currently we have another guy from Air Asia, Fernandez, who's doing a good job, but he's losing money aplenty at the moment. You know what it's like when you have big time money players that have played in the Premier League that now you've transitioned into the Championship. You can't possibly pay that player the same wages what he was in the Premier League. So some players, as we've spoken about before, have clauses in their contracts where if they do get relegated, they're able to be put on the transfer market, or their wages are cut in half, or they stay on the same wages. And you can't possibly do that in the Championship, Craig.
No, it's difficult, really difficult. There's just a slew of clubs when it's just about every club in the Championship has been to the Premier League at some stage, and I think half of the third tier teams have it as well. It's a dogfight, which makes it exciting. That's what I love about it so much. But I think financially, this pandemic's going to affect a lot of clubs moving forward. It'll be interesting to see what exactly happens when this all cleans itself up. But it sounds as though we got the Premier League coming back on June 17th, I believe.
Seems that way, doesn't it? Yeah, June 17th. I think it's pending, the government green light, right? Obviously, a lot could happen between now and then, but it seems that way. Germany's, setting the blueprint, isn't it? And it seems to be working really well so far. I'm still not used to seeing no fans. It's still weird, but as long as Fonzie's popping goals, so I'll keep watching. It's been fun, isn't it?
It's amazing, isn't it? Because with Fonzie, the timing of everything has really worked out for his exposure for himself. Remember, in the Champions League, just before the pandemic, he had that performance at Chelsea that caught the eye of all the British media that usually have their fingers up their asses, certainly about other leagues. And they exposed him to that. And then all of a sudden, they're the first league back, coming back with this pandemic, exposes him even more. And everybody around the world is now watching and even talking about him being in the conversation about being the best left back in the world. It's just insane. Like, when you really think about it, it's just incredible.
Is that, okay, let me ask you, that narrative right now, which is going through social media, is Fonzie up there as among the best left backs in world football? Is that just hyperbole simply because we haven't seen football for a while? We want a story, we're going to jump in it, obviously. It seems a bit, he's wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit early, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit early, I would say, primarily because he's not even close to the finished product. Some of his runs defensively he's in bad positions. He's just incredibly quick and gets himself out of trouble. Wait until he gets some experience and he starts to position himself better. It just comes with the game and the experience that he's playing with. He's only 19, 20 years old. So it's incredible. It just really is. And to have a player at left back that is the most talked about player.
But it seems now that this modern era of football, that literally the last year or two, say, fullbacks are sexy, right?
Yep.
From Wan-Bissaka at United, obviously, doing a good job there. Then obviously at Liverpool, those two fellas, incredible. Fonzie, you look around the leagues now, and suddenly left back, right back, where you used to put your worst players, are now where kids want to play. And maybe they'll move forward and play, midfield eventually. You're laughing a little bit, right? But isn't that the case, though, now?
The worst players. No, the worst players used to go in goal.
That's not fair. No, they used to, though, right?
Well, yeah. But you know what? There's I think we talk about guys that are impossible to replace. I think at Ipswich Town, Bobby Robson was in that position, coming out of the FA Cup in 78, 81 UEFA Cup when it really meant something. I mean, they were winning things. He was a constant winner, and he brought fullbacks into the game a lot. Ipswich and George Burley and Steve McCall, these types of players are really pushed on. Frank Yallop came into the Bobby Robson system just before he left to go to manage England. Got down the line, crossed the ball really, really well. So it's not something new, but certainly the class that we've seen at Liverpool with Trent Alexander and Robertson, and with now Alphonso Davies, we've seen it before. I mean, we've seen some great left backs in our time. The Brazilians have had a whole stack of them.
Couple.
Yeah, just a couple.
Fullbacks have always been sexy, guys. You're forgetting a lot of history here. A lot of history.
Yeah, I agree. But out of all the positions, though, right? Out of all the positions in football, probably the least sexy. Isn't it fair to say over the years?
Let me tell you as well, fullback is probably the hardest position to play in the team at the moment as well.
Yeah.
Just of the amount of ground that they cover within a game. You think about how many times they have to get forward to support the attack, and the distance of the run at a high intensity that they have to run in supporting the attack. And then when the ball breaks down or is turned over, they have to get their ass back another 100, whatever it is, yards, meters to get back and defend. So it's a very difficult position to play. And it's interesting now with all this position-specific training that a lot of clubs are doing, even the fitness side of things, the fullbacks and central midfielders are very extensive in their running. We know how many kilometers they run within a game, but the amount of high-intensity running that fullbacks have to do during a game is at a high level. And now bringing in the technical aspect of, can you put a crossing? Can you finish that final pass into the striker's space where he can go and score? Can you overlap and possibly get a goal-scoring chance yourself? These are all things that I think has helped Alphonso with his game. He's playing in a very athletic and physical team. The defending hasn't been too good so far in Germany, which is very MLS, I think. But he's also played in a league in MLS, which is very athletic and physical as well. So I think it's put him in good stead. His foundation has been good so far, but I agree with Craig. He's still very raw in that position. He's not a natural left back. Maybe it's just a stopgap at the moment while they try to find another left back, but they're winning games. I mean, is it Flick who's come in as the head coach since the last manager had a little bit a shocker? He's got the record now as the best winning record of any Bayern Munich manager in his first 25 games. That's even beating Pep, who inherited a treble-winning team the year before. Right. So this has done wonders, not only with Alphonso Davies, but with the Bayern Munich squad in general.
Yeah. So technically speaking, I mean, you mentioned right now he's bossing it through his athletic ability, his pace, and he's in the perfect team for that. But from a technical standpoint, has he got the tools, do you think, to move forward and evolve his game?
Absolutely.
There's one thing that I look at Alphonso at the moment, and he's got a lot of good qualities. And I was speaking to my older son about it when we were watching the game last week. I said, if there's one critique I have of him at the moment, it's his passing. Sometimes he gets a little bit lackadaisical with just his simple passing, whether it be over 10, 15 yards. He's a little bit lackadaisical and sluggish with that at times. But, boy, when he opens up on the dribble or when he combines, he's very good. So, for me, if I'm being hypercritical, for him to move on to be a top elite player in the world is a key thing in his passing and his decision-making in possession with his passing.
But his rise has been so quick, Deech, from where he was to where he's come from. A lot of clubs are watching him in Vancouver. It's not like he was unknown in the MLS. It was just Bayern were willing to invest, obviously, in a player with great potential, but no guarantees. And to see where he's come from there to being in the side
so quickly, right?
Quickly.
That's the thing that amazes me. It's not so much that he's making it. Okay, obviously it's a big story, but to do it just over a year since arriving. I think most of us, we discussed this how many times thinking, he'll likely be loaned out. at some point to a smaller club to get his European feet wet. Never happened. Second year he's there, you can't get him out of the team. And he's dominating big games in big tournaments. It's just something really special watching right now.
And we have to give a lot of credit to Bayern Munich as well because of the way they've dealt with him. It's very difficult for a younger player to arrive at a big club under such pressure. But this is a player that's come from North America, going to Europe where it's a different language, obviously a different color than the people that live there, the white people generating that live there. So that's a very difficult environment that a young black player is coming from North America who doesn't speak the language. So they didn't put him in the limelight straight away. They knew that there was going to be an undercurrent of pressure on him. They used him as a training player within the first team to get accustomed to the other players, the elite players within the squad. They moved him into the under-23s to get experience of playing in Germany. And then they slowly introduced him with the first team, whether it be 5 minutes here. And I remember last year we were getting frustrated as people in the media saying, damn, I wish he was playing more. Damn, why is he not getting on when he's a substitute? But there was a whole process that Bayern Munich were going through. And now we're seeing why they did it. So I have to give a lot of credit to not only the head coach, but to Bayern Munich, the club, the organization as a whole.
And the players.
Yeah.
The players right out of the gap, you talk about, they talk about the stories when he first came in and being introduced. And I think they've welcomed him in and that was a big part of him settling in, I believe. So, yeah, it's a big step for a young man to come out of Canada and to be thrown into there with a different language and everything else. There's a lot of pressures there for sure. He's dealt with it really well.
But I guess given his background, it seems that you could probably dump Fonzie on Mars and he'd be the most popular kid in the room. He's got that personality, right? Nothing seems to faze him. And that's really important. And going to a team like Bayern with all those stars who've won everything pretty much, maybe as much as there's pressure, they don't have to prove themselves. They're not looking over their shoulder. They've done it. They've accomplished it, right? So they can then put their arm around this kid and say, okay, you are part of the next generation. I think it's the perfect fit for him. I'm more, not concerned, but curious as to what's going on with the hair. He's got the Alice band now. He's wearing kind of up high, right? Is that going to get bigger? Is he going to be like who was the pineapple? Remember the pineapple in the Prem back in the 80s? Jason Lee. Yeah.
Pineapple.
Pineapple. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe that could be the way it's going. And hair makes a difference. Right?
I hope not. That was brutal, Deech.
That was brutal. But going back to Alfonso, like even watching him on the game yesterday and seeing Muller with his quotes afterwards saying, like, we don't call him Fonz or Davis, we call him Meat as the he just looks like a kid and a player that is thoroughly enjoying his football at the moment. He's playing with a smile on his face. He looks like he's embracing being in Germany and just playing football.
How can you not, Deej?
I know that, but it's so
seriously, the kid has been embraced by everybody.
Like that. It's so good to see a young player like that.
Oh, it's amazing.
But it's very refreshing how, as you said, the first team squad have welcomed him in, but he's embraced it as well. And you're right. I've been involved with a couple of camps where I've seen him in Canada camp where he is a pivotal part of that group. He's understands when it's time to work, but he's also a center of attention person where he keeps the comical side and the actual hopes up of everyone when things might be a little bit bad. And he's still a young player. He's still only 19 years old. You've got to remember that, guys.
Well, let me ask you this, right? So he goes to Canada, right? And he's 19 years old. He's a kid. There's pretty much everyone around him's older, more experienced, but he's without doubt the best player. He's playing on the biggest club. He's playing in the biggest games. Does that just naturally make him a leader now on the Canadian setup?
Not necessarily. It all depends on the person's character, but I think he will be. I think he'll be that guy where it certainly helps having people like that in the training room and then on the pitch as well. Obviously, other players all of a sudden will be looking up to him as a 19-year-old playing where he is. It's an experience much different than what he's going to have with Bayern Munich with the national team.
Well, we talk about, replacing, stars and big names and how hard it can be. We never thought we'd see Jimmy Brennan replaced on Canada, did we? and now we have Fonzie.
Yeah.
Jimmy's listening. He's not, but...
That's why you said the worst players are left back because of Jimmy.
That's why, yeah.
Jimmy
exactly.
never scored. He never got a cross in. He couldn't shoot. He's not a very good header to the ball.
Jimmy could shoot. That's a good thing Jimmy had. He could crack a ball.
Yeah,
he caught a couple of nice ones, scored a couple of nice ones for TFC, that's for sure. He did.
Yeah.
He did.
I remember John Lyle said to Chris Kawamia, he was having a nightmare in training and his confidence was down. He used to do these training sessions with him. Like he would have him guys cut the ball back from, tight at the near post, and he cut it back about 5 yards. So he just smashed it in the empty net just to give him confidence.
Yeah.
One time, John Lau was so pissed off with him. He's like, pulls him, and he's like, you've done quite well for a guy who can't shoot, hit, or fucking cross the ball.
There's some coaching for some man management for you, eh? Jesus.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, let's ask you then. When you arrived at Ipswich, obviously, you're this young kid from Canada, right? No one knew who you were. Ipswich at that time, coming off, a pretty dominant phase. Who was the guy that you replaced? It's a long time ago now. And at what point did you replace him? And was that accepted by the fans, or was there a bit of a pushback?
Well, yeah, because, Ipswich has gone, they had Paul Cooper for so many years and winning the FA Cup with him, UEFA Cup. Terrific goalkeeper, not the biggest guy, carried a little bit extra lumber later in his career, went to Man City. But brilliant goalkeeper. Great hands, great positioning. So he then left, got older. Younger goalkeeper John Holsworth moved in. He was the guy that I replaced, and he moved on to Oldham Athletic. Played up at Oldham for a few years, John, and so I came in and replaced him in the season of 1988, I suppose, something like that.
And that was
it was a difficult time for us because the very first year as a youth player, Ipswich get relegated. Bobby Robson leaves. The club kind of goes down into the division below and stale there for several years. And that's when I got on the team and we got into the Premier League from there. But, everything was the golden generation. And why can't you do that? And, they actually expected the fans of Ipswich to win the league. Even in '92, when we were early in the season, we were second or third in the division after like 6 or 7 games. And everybody's like, yeah, we're going to win the league. And it's like, well, hold on just a minute. Like, if we get one injury here, we're in trouble, So it was tough, but nothing harder than Bobby Ferguson, who is Bobby Robson's right-hand man, taking over.
That's a tough gig, isn't it? Yeah.
Tough gig. And he wasn't suited for it as far as management goes. A great coach. Bobby Robson had the good guy, bad cop situation where he was always had a sort of not a nasty guy beside him, but somebody who the players didn't always like. And the Cyril Lee was the guy at Ipswich at one time, and then Bobby Ferguson was that guy, and then all the players would go to Bobby Robson and say, oh, Fergie's having a go at me, he's not doing this and that and the other. It's like, oh, and he put his arm around him, and everybody loved Bobby. That was kind of his thing. John Lyle did that a little bit. Mick McGivern was his right-hand man at Ipswich, and he was a bit of a hard ass and push people, and John Lyle was the guy that smoothed things over. But Fergie, he just couldn't handle the pressure. The media, remember Dave Allard wrote an article saying that the players didn't have any fire in their bellies when they played at Liverpool, and he grabs him by the neck and has him by the tie, and he's got fingers on his nose, and he's
imagine nowadays the manager doing that to a journalist.
And then he goes golfing, and he's at the golf course at Purtis in Ipswich, and he thinks the guys in front of him, the foursome, are being slow because it's him and they're trying to piss him off. And he's convinced it's because he's the Ipswich town manager and they know it. So this goes on for a few holes, and he's standing there about 150 yards out waiting. This is like Charlie Woods, I think. Charlie Woods was with him, one of the coaches at Ipswich for years and years. He's like, that's it. They're taking the piss. And he lines up his ball and he fires it into the foursome on the green. and doesn't hit anybody, but it's like drops right in the green. And one of the guys is like, "Oh, what the fuck?" So he walks over to the ball and he goes over to pick it up, and Fergie's like steaming in like this. He's like, "You touch that fucking ball and I'll scoop up your ass."
Well, the paranoia is rife in football.
It was insane.
I played for a couple of coaches like that. They're very paranoid about everything around them.
Everything.
Actually, John Carver got like that when he was here in Toronto as well.
Well, the message boards, he admitted reading, right? I mean, what do you do that for? Crazy.
Fergie was up and playing Bradford too, and they went out for an Indian when they got up there. Great Indian food, and well, everywhere in England, but Bradford. Anyway, the taxi driver, they were saying, the taxi driver asked them where they're from. And they said, "Oh, we're Ipswich Town coaches." And the guy says, "Oh, you guys used to be good." Next thing you know, Fergie's got him by the throat in the back seat. What do you mean you used to? Everybody's having a go at me.
Do you think it's more important then when you replace a legend, right? Is it important to be the opposite to that guy? Or do you think it's smart for a club to get someone who's a little bit similar, who can just kind of continue what the legend started? Or have you just got to cut your own path?
I don't know. It's difficult. I think a guy like Bruce Grobbelaar went over to Liverpool and was trying to be so much different than everybody else. Well, actually, you know what? He was trying to be himself because he was that in the North American Soccer League with the Whitecaps. Very entertaining, flamboyant, but Liverpool and football in England wasn't ready for that change early on, and that entertainment type of thing that he brought to the game.
Ray Clements was far more typical stoic goalkeeper, right?
Right. Very solid, did your job.
Opposite.
Yeah, opposite, where he was like into the entertainment thing, and eventually they took to it.
Couple of European Cups helped.
Yeah, and at first that helps. Yeah, spaghetti legs. But for Deitch, when you replace somebody, nobody cares about whether you're similar. But if you're knocking goals, they don't care. Just do it.
For strikers, it's a lot different because it doesn't matter what profile you are, as Craig said there. If you're scoring goals, the fans will soon forget about the guy that was just been sold or played before it. It's when you stop scoring goals or when you start having a nightmare that they start thinking, bloody hell, why have we brought this fella in? Or I wish we could have that old fella back. But going back to other players or coaches, it's very difficult. I mean, you look at Manchester United, they've been trying to replace Fergie for the past 15 years or so.
You mean they have it now with Ole, Deitch?
Yeah, well, he's understudies. Looks like he's turning things around, but it's tough. It's very tough. I mean, Mourinho starts trying to find himself and replace himself with his old self still.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's very tough. I think you have to go in as the person yourself with the mindset, I've been brought into this club because of the talent or whatever I have that has made me successful. So I have to stick with my values. I can't try and be like the ex-person that was here that brought that success. I have to be very disciplined, and I have to try and understand what has brought me my success and try and implement that at the club or try and provide that performance at the club that I'm now playing for.
Yeah. It's like when I replaced Jerry Dobson on Sportsnet.
That was tough. That's tough.
It wasn't easy because Jerry was like this, and I mean this with all respect, like this comfortable pair of slippers, right? He'd been there for years. Everyone knew Jerry did a great job. He's a legend, and then, up I pop, who I think was a different style entirely, right? And some people took to it, some people didn't take to it.
And look at you now.
Oh, look at me now. I'm unemployed. It's great. Starting a Sunday afternoon with you arseholes.
Got the Conquer COVID shirt on because it's clean.
Yeah, you can see one there. Exactly, yeah. It's the one without flour all over it, actually. That's what it comes down to. But, yeah, it's everyone's job. You replace someone, right, at some point. And, it's been, for all of us, very interesting, for sure. But like you mentioned before, the Prem is back soon. Italy's going to come back as well, according to the Serie A. Spain's back soon as well. It's amazing. I've kind of forgotten everything, where we were. I knew, obviously, in England, Liverpool's winning. City were pretty good. There's a battle for fourth place.
Of course you know that.
But there's so much that I've forgotten, right? I've seen today there's rumours about David Luiz leaving Arsenal. Oh, yeah. David Luiz is at Arsenal. Anything surprising you? Have you done any names popping up and you've forgotten about entirely?
Well, they're talking about Coutinho as well, right?
That's right.
That caught me. I was like, oh yeah, that was going on, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's happier than Liverpool players. Klopp's like, oh, everybody's happy to be back, contact and all this, and socializing, being amongst themselves. Because for the last 10 weeks, they've thinking, we're not even going to get this fucking trophy.
Yeah.
I mean,
for all the teams, it must be more difficult for them, right? I would think.
For sure. If they scrapped the league and said, listen, sorry, that 25-point lead you got there, it isn't going to count for anything.
Because it might not happen again.
I was reading a couple of weeks ago that they brought in a psychologist for the players because a lot of players were very down. And along those lines, Craig, they were thinking, are we ever going to finish this season?
Yeah.
About 3 weeks ago, and they actually brought in a psychologist. They were doing Zoom calls with the players. I think Julian Henderson actually come out this week and said something as well, Shams, about if they eventually lift the trophy, it's going to be very, very strange and weird doing it in a neutral stadium or an empty stadium.
But they have to, because even if they did it at Anfield and it's empty, outside Anfield, it's going to be just jammed, right?
Oh my goodness.
There's talking about the FA Cup being played in front of 20,000 people. If the certain numbers remain or drop below a certain level, the FA Cup, they're going to try and finish somehow, and they'll play it in front of 20,000 at Wembley. I don't know, 20,000 or 50,000 or 80,000. I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Are they pushing it too far? That's a big
I would have
question
thought
right
when we talk about players being affected, I think Liverpool players out of anybody would have been affected more than anybody else. Man City, season, And then they got the teams at the bottom. They're testing positive for COVID.
Yeah, exactly. No one else is, just those guys, right?
Oh, fuck. They're just like, end the season, now. As long as there's no relegation.
Well, Troy Deeney at Watford says, I'm not training. When they first came back, I've got a kid, a newborn at home who had some breathing difficulties in his early life. I'm not going to risk it. And how can you debate that, right?
Yeah.
But let me put yourselves in these guys' shoes. Would you, say you are still playing, would you be confident, happy to come back at this point?
Yeah. I think they're doing it right. They're testing. And so all the players that are in training are being tested. There's an element of a risk, of course, but it's low. We just hope they just don't take it home to somebody else. But I think under the circumstance, the way they've actually dealt with it and protecting players coming to training and testing, I think that they've done a really, really excellent job to make it as safe as possible.
Explain TFC right now, Deitch, like your experience right now. What is it like to go there to train? How are they training? Are they still in their little quads individually?
Yes, it's been super organized. As I've explained to you before, the process is pretty tiring, but it's very organized and very clean. And I think it would be exactly the same in the Premier League and throughout Europe in what they're trying to do, because they want to get football back on the field. I think in North America, we're taking a little bit more of a careful approach. We're still training as individuals. Actually, the first team got some good news this past Thursday or Wednesday that they can now start training in small groups, which is groups of 5 or 6, I think. So with the second team, we'll be a week behind them. So next Monday, we'll be allowed to train in small groups. But it's great to see that the first team in MLS are allowing their clubs to train in small groups. So you can do a little more in small groups.
Does that small group stick together like all week long?
I don't know.
Is it always the same small group together?
I'm not sure if it's the same group altogether, but you have to remember that the process involves a questionnaire in the morning. So every coach, every player has to fill out a questionnaire, medical questionnaire in the morning to see if they're feeling any different, to say where you've been. You have to fill out a daily log. If you've been to, I don't know, if you've been to your local grocers or to the garden center or wherever it is, you have to log that down. You get, there's a process of going into the car park. You have to wait in your car before being approached by a staff member and signaled to come out individually by yourself to go through a screening process by yourself where you have to sanitize once again. Your temperature is taken. You're then escorted out through a pathway to your grid on the field. That's what the individual training has been done so far. With a mask, with gloves on, you're allowed to remove your mask when you get to your grid because they don't want the players training with masks on. But all the staff have masks on, gloves on throughout the training session as well. So it's been pretty organized in that sense. But I don't know how the small group training is going to work, Craig, because when you think about it, you can do a lot more with small group training. You know this as well. You can work with your back four now and maybe your holding midfielder in just doing some pattern work with the ball or defensive shape. You can work with your front group, whether it be crossing and finishing. I don't know the certain areas that we're working on, whether it's still going to be in quadrants or whether they're going to open up the actual distance or the area that these small groups can work on now. I think it's heading in the right direction. But it's just been a long drawn process at the moment. It amazes me how England were basically doing individual training for 3 or 4 days and they suddenly went into
straight away, yeah.
Training.
Hey, Deej, is Michael Bradley training properly now? Is he looking healthy?
So Mike has been doing running. He's been doing his training separately than the individual group. But I think we all know Mike, he's destined to come back as quick as possible. He's got an extremely strong mentality. He looks after himself, not only in the gym, but off of the field, the way he eats as well. And I've seen him from a distance doing his running and turning, and he looks pretty good at the moment. I think he was estimated to come back in early June or middle of June to start training with the group. So I think it's built up nicely, this COVID pandemic for him.
Yeah.
Injury side of things, that he can probably be back with the team when they reassemble into large-sided groups.
But then on the flip side, I think, obviously Michael was great for him, but then Liam Miller or someone who may have got a lot of minutes without Michael playing, a young player, opportunities to get, Christ, there goes my playing time. Mike's back. It goes both ways, right?
Liam Fraser.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, Liam Fraser, yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, sometimes it works in your favor. You got to get a little bit of luck when you get your opportunities.
Yeah.
One way or the other. And if you're injured right now and you have a long-term injury, this is actually, you got to do it anyway. And long-term injuries suck.
Yeah.
At the best of times.
Yeah, but we'll see how many long-term injuries come out of this, right? With guys rushing back, and there's going to be a lot of soft tissue injuries, which is why I know you guys wanted 3-month training camps, which isn't going to happen necessarily, but there will be some injuries. We know that. But hey, I haven't actually followed it that closely. Have there been that many in Germany that you've heard of?
Well,
guys aren't dropping, are they? I mean, you see cramping and stuff late in games, but
our friend Haaland at Dortmund got injured last week. He had to come off in the Bayern game, and there's been, I think on average, even Dunlop spoke about this last week, just the intensity that the game is played at nowadays because of the limited stop and starts with the referees, because of the non-inclusion of fans. And I think there's average 2 injuries per game at this moment. Now, I'm not up to date with whether they're long-term injuries or just muscle injuries.
Soft tissue, yeah.
So, but I was reading that there's at least 2 injuries per game at the moment.
Now we're logging injuries and what type of injuries and when they happen and why they happen, man. When will these goddamn analytics stop?
It'd be interesting as well, Craig. It'd be interesting to see the other sports when they come back, like basketball, hockey, stuff like that, whether there is a change in the dynamics of the game, the stop-starts. I know there's different rules, obviously, with timeouts and the periods of time where they're different than we play with football. But just seeing from the injury aspect, if there's going to be similar injuries, there is in soccer.
Well, we'll have to get Alex McKechnie back on and talk about that.
You know what? Great idea. Yeah, exactly. As explosive sports, you think more so, wouldn't you?
I mean, all they've done with the Raptors at this present moment is kit them out individually. Well, I think Toronto FC players as well. MLSC have done a really good job with this, trying to give them everything they need, whether it's a stationary bike or whatever they need to, if they have an injury, weights. So they're all set up and kitted out, but it's got to be a higher risk of soft tissue injuries for sure coming back,
I wonder which athletes are more prone to gain a few pounds in their quarantine. There's got to be that guy at every club, right?
NFL.
Looking forward to seeing NFL.
It's all NFL. Yeah. That's the one where if you're a frontline NFL player, Dan, you're like you put on 20 pounds and you're happy.
Yeah, everyone thinks you're the best. Hey, you've just put on 30 pounds. That's amazing.
The frontline guys used to be, if you had one 300 pounder, it was right. Now you have to be 300 pounds.
Everyone is 300 pounds or over on the front line. I had a buddy who played 12 years in the CFL, big Métis guy named Chief, because we were very politically incorrect.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, and like we're best buds. Went to Jamaica together. 308 pounds, 6'4", and I was bugging him one time, as I do, and he lay on me. I couldn't get up. I was like I looked like how Danny looks right now. I look like Ditch right now. But imagine 5'11", half Asian guy getting squished by a Métis dude, 6'4", 306. And I just go, geez, get the fuck off me. I can't breathe. It was ridiculous. And I just kind of went, holy geez, like another this is that other level thing that I'll never know what you guys do, but that other level, like there's so much respect when you see someone. I know we've talked about other players having that other level. One of those things, that's one of those things. And the guy could dance. He was great. He could dunk. Like was
he fat? Was he fat, would you say? Or
so depends what he was fast for. For a souvlaki on a pita, yes.
No, fat.
No, fat.
Oh,
fat.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean, there's fats and there's fats, right? Was he fast? Was he fast?
It depends on
He wasn't ripped.
He wasn't ripped.
No.
So he had the belly.
But Val was, so I'm going back to fast. Quick story about Val. We used to stay up late in the house we all lived in, and he heard some like stepping and alarms going off on the cars outside of the main street in Montreal. And so he looked out, and some guy is car walking at 3 a.m. He goes, I better not hear my car. Like he had a Mustang. He goes, I better not hear my Mustang alarm go off. He hears the Mustang alarm. He bolts out of the car, out of the house, and he sees the kid car walking. And he goes, I'm going to get you. This kid bolts for his apartment. And the apartments have like the front door and the kind of low-rise apartments, front door, and then the second door, but they're all glass. And there's that little kind of lobby. It's not a lobby. It's just like a step in. He catches them. The guy's like trying to get in like this, trying to go through, trying to get his key in. He catches them in between. He just goes, sorry, I have to do this. And so he apologized and pummeled them a couple times, said, don't car walk anymore. And they left them all crumpled up in that little vestibule area and just went home. And I went, that is fair justice. That's some street.
Somebody walked on my car in England too.
Pardon me?
Somebody walked on my car as well. They ran right over top of it.
Were you a little Escort?
No, it was a beige Golf.
Oh, it was Golf.
Yeah, it was like a beige.
Was it Cabriolet, was it?
Oh, that'd be too fancy.
Yeah, gonna say.
It was a piece of shit. It was like a 1 liter.
Hey, big car for parts of England.
Yeah, a 1.0. I was like...
The lawnmower.
Yeah.
But everyone's got that. So go ahead, Craig.
I was just thinking of cars. I came over to do the Euro or something 2000, and I ended up at the airport, and the guy, I had to rent a car, and TSN sorted it out, and the guy says, hey, do you want to upgrade? We got these, these Ford Focuses or whatever. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. Free upgrade, apparently. I walk like Steve Martin in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles all the way to the fucking car, and I'm like looking at this frickin' Ford Focus station wagon, blue, baby, sky blue. It was awful.
Watch out, ladies.
So I ended up I drove it, and then Vic Router saw me pull into the parking lot one day. He's like, hey, soccer star, nice car. It was awful.
That's great.
Absolutely awful. Yeah.
Hey, everyone's got that large friend, right, who moves well, haven't they? You know, either on the dance floor. You haven't got one of those? maybe you are that friend. No.
Yeah, maybe I am that guy. Well, no, I don't move well.
My mate Boomer, he's called Boomer, huge guy, but great hockey player. Any sports he just excelled at. Obviously never elite level, but moved around better than most of us and was packing must have been close to 300. Always made me sick. Like, really? How can you move that way, man? That's not right. You shouldn't be able to.
I mean, when you think about it, Dan, those top level NFL front guys are unbelievably quick most of them over 40 yards, 20 yards, 12 yards. They can only do it a few times and they got to suck on oxygen, but they're lightning fast.
Hey, Wanda, when you went to Jamaica, did you sit beside your mate Chief?
Oh, yeah. The funny thing is there were a bunch of rednecks from South Carolina, and they were all the little dudes, it was very interesting because they thought because we were both, he's Métis, so we're both kind of the same brown, beige kind of thing. And he's just like, wow, you fucking grow them big in Canada. And I'm like, and so Chief and I would always have, before we started our night, we'd have 4 chugging beers to get over the hangovers. So they're hitting Red Stripe at us, and we would just go chugging beer. So we had to chug 4 beers to get over the hangovers just to go out. So that was kind of our MO.
Simpler times, eh?
You wonder why you never made it, eh, Dan?
We wanted to ask Dish, though, MLS, Dish, what's the latest news on that?
So from MLS in general, of when
their tournament thing that we've been hearing about.
So the process, what they were trying to agree with most of the clubs is that they were going to bring all the clubs down to Orlando from around the 7th or 8th of June and stay down there for around 6 weeks, which was ludicrous in my opinion. You can imagine it from a player's point of view, Craig, being stuck in a hotel room for 6 weeks, and it was possibly going to be 6 to 8 weeks where they would play around 10 games. But now they've come to terms with leaving or saying to the team, stay in your own environment, your own training ground, your own, obviously, city for a prolonged amount of time. And hopefully they're going to be bringing the teams down to Disney at the end of June now. So maybe the last week of June to play a mini tournament of around 4 to 5 games. By the time that tournament is over, they're hoping that the COVID cases or new cases that are in effect have become drastically low. And then all teams can go back to their hometown cities and play the remainder of their seasons in their home stadiums without fans. But that's, again, in negotiations. The Players' Union still haven't agreed on this, so the players are still talking and trying to come up with a plan or an agreement where everyone's safe, everyone's medically insured. I know clubs and owners are still worried about that as well. And as I said, the players' mental welfare is just as important as getting the game back on for the fans and for us in the media.
They talked about, just the impact financially, anybody on the league playing without, it's a league that depends on ticket sales for sure. They don't have a big enough TV contract to pay all the contracts. The owners had meetings about this. So did anybody talk about the economic impact about it?
I think the owners have been in talks literally twice a week, Craig. So they know the economic impact. As I've mentioned before, the big key thing here, which is different than Europe and around the world, is that the league pay the players. Remember that. So they're under a
centralized contracts. Yeah.
So centralized contract. It's only the DP players that are paid by the league, but also by the owners. So the DP contracts are a little bit different. But for the players, I'm hearing that they've been told that there could be a 10% wage cut for the remainder of the season. So I'm not sure whether that's part of the negotiations that they're trying to hamper out and trying to agree with, as well as the smaller time frame which they would be going down to play this tournament? Is it going to be regionalized? Is it going to be East and West Coast? I have no idea about those practicalities at the moment.
Yeah, maybe a fitting time, fellas, to announce that. I'm sorry, but we've got to take a 10% pay cut on Footy Prime moving forward. Sorry.
10%.
That's okay.
Send me your social insurance numbers. I'll make sure that the dole is paid out. $12 a month, and a 6-pack of Amsterdam.
Well, you know what, Wonga? Maybe you could actually apply for that $40,000 business loan. You know?
Yeah, I could have if I did it last year. I started our company January. If I would have started it in September, we might have had a shot.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it. Oh, well. Hey, listen, before we go, guys, I'm not sure if you saw this. ITV in England have been redoing certain moments in sports. And one that jumped out to me, they showed Euro 96, England against Germany, the Paul Gascoigne miss. You know, the one when he slides in, and he would have been a huge moment. They redid it, so he actually scores the goal. It looks incredible, actually, the way they did it. It's so well done. So I thought, are there any moments that you would like to redo, either in your careers? We'll start with your careers. Is there a moment that you would like to redo? Just one moment, if you could change history, what would it be? So Craig, can we start with you? I mean, I'm sure you guys, I did ask you this before, but as I say every week, you never do any kind of preparation work. But,
well, you know what? There would be a moment. We were 1-0 up against Mexico, qualifying for '94 World Cup. If we beat them, we were tied on goal points, but they slaughtered teams in Azteca, so our goal differential. We were 1-0 up. And just before halftime, Hugo Sanchez scored in Toronto at Varsity Stadium. Can't remember whose legs it went through. I want to say John Catliff, but I'm not sure why he'd be back there. But anyway, I didn't see the shot come through his legs. And if I had seen it shot, I think I would have saved it. And that would have been, that moment. But fast forward another 6 years, I remembered that moment when I saved the penalty at the Gold Cup final. And I was yelling at the players are coming in. Oh my God, you saved the penalty. And they're all, but you got 6 seconds to release the ball, right? And I actually thought there was 10 minutes left in the game. And I started screaming at Jeff Clark and everything else, just sort of really out of character. But I was just like, we got 10 fucking minutes to see this out. And if we do it, we'll remember it forever. But if you fucking blow it, it'll change everything. Everything, your whole life moving forward, everything will be changed. You know what I mean? Like that's how quickly, and those moments are very, very few and far
important
between.
Moments,
yeah. You got to make sure you finish things off because you've seen those nightmares where people let things just out of their grasp.
Were they surprised by your reaction at that point? Do you think?
Well, they were kind of still. It was like, who fucking cares? But it was like, because I ended up just from that moment, all the players were there, and I had to release the ball. The game was still on. Mm-hmm. I just ended up, I think, punting it out of bounds at the halfway line, just because I didn't want to just kick it back and give up possession that easily. It was like, I needed time for everybody to push out and close the throw-in down.
Craig, there's no way an international referee would screw a Canadian national team for a goalkeeper holding the ball too long, would they? That would never happen.
No, of course.
Nah, never.
You name it, we had it happen to us.
Deej, what about yourself? Is there a moment in your career that you would change? I've got a feeling I know what it is, actually, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, we know the obvious, which is obviously the fight, which got me sent off for missing the FA Cup final. But there's actually another one, and it was in a cracking game at Wembley for Sunderland, and it was the playoff final versus Charlton, where we ended up drawing 4-4. And it ended up going to penalty kicks, and we lost on penalty kicks. But in extra time, I had a glorious chance to win the game. And the ball came across from our winger at the time, Nicky Summerby. And I don't know why at that moment I decided to go for the scissor kick, the half volley, because I felt it looked more comfortable when I was more than adequate to just head the ball, diving header, and put it in the back of the net and win the game. And I ended up trying to go for the scissor kick or the half volley, the Canio half volley, and then ended up missing the ball totally. And it was a moment in my career that I still look back on, and even Sunderland fans remind me of it, even though someone missed a penalty in the shootout, and I was actually next up after Mickey Gray, who missed the penalty, which we eventually lost the game on. I was the 7th penalty kick taker, but it was that miss during extra time that I really looked back on and said I should have headed that ball. And my dad reminded me straight after, thankfully, the game in the players' lounge after me. He said, "Why the fuck did you not head that ball?" I'm like,
Thanks, Dad.
that's all I've been thinking about in the shower for the past half an hour.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
Dad.
that was a £75 million game that was on the cards for us to go to the Premier League. But
it's got to be so, as an athlete, a professional at that level, it's got to be so frustrating knowing that something you do 9 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, not 10 times out of 10, and that one time cost you. I mean, Craig could have been at a World Cup. Deitch could have been up in the Prem, the Black Hat, at that time. So it must have gone
Euro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How
it's
moments like that can
when you think about it, World Cups and when you're tournament events, when you get to say the last 16 in a knockout event, you're talking about that March Madness NCAA moments where it doesn't matter how good the team is in the world. You go to one-off games, miracles happen all the time. Look at the Olympics in 80 in Salt Lake or in the United States at
the Miracle on Ice.
The Miracle on Ice against the Russians, a bunch of amateur American players on a one-off. I think even the coach said, this team beats us 9 out of 10 times, but not today. And so World Cups are so difficult to win. You look at England in 70, how well they played. It could have done better.
It's a great team. I look at
86.
I look at my sports fandom. So many disappointments centre around World Cups in England. Sol Campbell, that goal being ruled off for offside in '98.
Yeah,
the
hand of God.
Argentina hand of God being probably the biggest one, right? Just imagine if that was called. History's rewritten. England could be a World Cup champion. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. And I think I remember Lineker having one come right across the box too that he had a great chance
Jesus Christ, yeah. Gerrard slip. What if Gerrard hadn't slipped for Liverpool 3 or 4 years ago now? We wouldn't be saying, it's been 30 years. We'll be saying, it's been 3 years.
Yeah. No, they talk about moments like that. Kawhi Leonard, Toronto Raptors. If that game 6 against Philadelphia bounces out and goes out, they go to overtime, they could have lost it. Next thing you know, everybody's going, what a disaster. They sold the Rosen, or they traded it off to Rosen.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And now Kawhi goes.
There's a parallel universe out there where I'm a really happy fucking sports fan. Really happy.
Yeah,
everyone's champions. Everyone's winning. All those moments that broke my heart actually elated me instead.
I think you're right, Tom. So England, out of all the football memories and experiences and history, England made me cry the most as a child.
Penalty kicks.
No question.
Just in general, like just the build-up.
Always the build-up.
The Euros, the World Cups, and you always think this is going to be our year. I even remember the hand of God. I was a young boy. Remember, I wanted to kill Maradona.
I hated him. I was terrified of him.
When he dropped that hand of God in after the game, that just pissed the English off. Remember that after the war as well, right?
It was. Yeah, exactly. But that whole World Cup though, Maradona was just dominating, and I can't remember. I mean, there's been no other player that's terrified me more as a sports fan than that guy. And I remember watching that game, like you, Deitch, watching it so closely. And every time he got the ball, my stomach would get nervous. Like, oh God, don't. He scores that incredible goal. He gets the hand of God goal. My nightmares were fulfilled there. It was awful, but you never really discover that romance as an adult, do you? In sport, as you do as a kid. Something very special about it. These are superheroes. These are magical people. You never get that back, no matter what.
No, you're right. It's amazing, isn't it? When you're a kid and you watch that, you're just like in awe of it. It's just
because you don't see the bad side, right? You just see these guys who are like larger than life, these comic book heroes.
Yeah,
and
the camera's always on the winners.
Yep. And you're playing in the street the next day, and you are Paul Gascoigne, or you are Wayne Gretzky. Whatever it is. It
must be fun, if you were one of those guys who were just so dominant. I mean, like we talk about Fonzie at Bayern. I mean, how can it not be fun playing? Like,
if you're that good, if the game's that simple, to you,
it's that simple, and
the game's simple.
Everybody loves me, and da. I hope he has good handlers. I really do, because it's a long it's going to be a long career for him, hopefully, if he's physically able. And to deal with all these different things you need somebody that's done it before, certainly would have some experience being able to balance all these different aspects of his life. And there's going to be criticism down the road too. And he's on social media, and there's going to be a time when people will come at him, media will come at him. There's always going to be something.
Probably already are, I'm sure. I'm sure he's all, he's that public on social media. I'm sure he's being got at by some imbeciles out there.
Yeah.
And maybe one day we'll have him on Footy Prime, eh, guys?
I would love that.
Yeah.
Of course we would. We'll work on that.
Hopefully we can. Just go.
Yeah.
Try and
all right, fellas. Well, Deech, when you start working with him, once once Canada starts playing again, you get your old gig back again, assuming that happens. You start finessing the Footy Prime angle with Fonzie, will you?
No, I just want to be back into training bigger groups and getting hopefully football back in MLS, let alone international level. But hopefully we have some good news with Canada as well, Craig. I think they're starting to change things up with the qualification process. CONCACAF are trying to wrangle things in a good way, I think, for Canada, that they could possibly qualify in a different way now. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a bunch going around about something's going to have to change because they're not going to be able to do it like they were going to with the hex and on ranking. So it's going to be probably something larger, more teams involved, I would think.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have Victor Montagliani on here again too, and you can tell us what's going on.
I was looking forward to that potential playoff against Papua New Guinea or wherever the hell they were going to go.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the one thing about the national team over the last, 10, 15 years, we've played against small islands like we've never had before. I mean, ranked well outside 100.
Yeah.
I don't think our national team has played against a qualifier very rarely against a top 30 side. I don't know if we've played any outside of the United States.
Well, maybe this big break of ours from sports might be beneficial to certain teams and certain countries and certain nations. We'll see. I wouldn't call it a silver lining. It's been a pretty dreadful time for humanity. We know that. But if we can grasp at something, let's look at sport, and maybe we'll see some benefits like a healthy Liverpool and a healthy Toronto Maple Leafs and an easier route to the World Cup for Canada.
Speaking of not bothering about the pandemic, the Leafs, those guys with another bad season just goes
in the
away.
Playoffs. 24 teams, anyone can win it now if they follow through with this. Fantastic. Mikhail is going to be healthy. I'm so excited about this. It's going to be fantastic. All right, boys. Listen, I'm assuming that we're running the disc. The floppy disk is almost out of space there.
We got about 5 minutes left, so if you want to go one more out, you could.
No, I'm done. You guys done?
Yeah, I gotta say a couple things. One, Alphonso Davies is a Cosby sweater away from living in the 80s. Danny, you definitely, if we flipped your head upside down, Sharms, and just put a little mouth on, he'd be upside down face, man. It's awesome.
Upside down head. I told you that's what we used to call it.
It's so good.
Upside down heat.
And that's it, fellas. That's all I got.
All right. What a way to end the show. Hey, Craig's working in his upside down head now as well, actually.
Yeah.
The beer's looking good. It's coming in.
Bloody hell, is it ever great?
Does that surprise you? A little bit?
No, I knew it was great. I knew it was great. I just didn't realize as it got longer, it just, Deech, I'm going to have to use the just for men. Have to kick that in.
Get down and send you a little package.
I'll send it. It's $9 on Amazon. Just $9.
We can start calling you the Silver Fox. Sounds good, man. Amazon. I like that. I'm actually concerned because I buzzed my hair, so I'm concerned it's coming in a bit grayer than it was before. I'm going to see.
Whatever.
Keep it up.
Mr. Pies.
Whatever.
It is great. I don't gray my hair. Are you kidding me? Look at his beard. Very good.
That name again is Mr. Pie.
Mr. Pie. All right, everyone. That's been Footy Prime. Our thanks to Amsterdam Brewery, of course. Our thanks to the Dean Blundell Show, deanblundell.com. We'll be back again next week. It's been fun, guys. We love our guests, don't get me wrong. But it's good to go old school a little bit and just have a little chin wag between the 4 or 5 of us. So thanks, fellas. And we'll be back same time, same place next week. Cheers for watching and listening.